Paul, let me come to you now. I think it's a year since you were injured and you had
About
that...
16 months.
16 months, yeah. And you had that tortuous journey out and Marie died, sadly. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Remarkably, in fact, the leg wounds healed up. I can walk in straight lines. If I go too far, I tend to veer left. I can't run backwards with a camera, so that stops me going back. But no, I mean, you know, physically, and I think probably mentally, I'm more or less back to where I was.
And mentally, how big a toll did it take on you?
Quite a huge one. You know, losing Marie and Remy in the situation that we did was obviously devastating. But I think, in reality, I can deal with that. Marie died doing a job she loved. It wasn't a job, it was her life, it was her passion. And as Richard, her partner, said, she'd have made a lousy old lady, you know. So that side, but the part that sticks with me most is, I mean, you take a look at that photograph.
Just talk us through this photograph.
Yeah, we'd been in Bab Amra during what I can only describe as a medieval siege. There was the 4th Division had surrounded a tiny neighbourhood, I mean, a few kilometres squared, really, and were just pounding it with heavy artillery, Grad rockets, Katyusha rockets, 80mm mortars. Every munition you can imagine was fired randomly on that city for all of the time I was there. This was the end result. This was a former woodworking shop. It was one of 2 basements in the neighbourhood of Bab Amra, and it was kind of rightly known as the widow's basement. This was where the people who'd lost all their husband, the menfolk, were taken with the children, put down inside in the hope that they didn't get a direct hit, because believe me, that isn't a bomb shelter. That is a woodworking shop that housed hundreds of people.
Okay, I think we've got another photo that we can bring up on the screen now.
This was the day me and Marie were in the field clinic in Bab Amra. What you've got to understand is that the regime had a priority list of targets at this point in the conflict. Doctors and medical staff were #1 on that list. They worked on the theory that if no help could be provided to anybody, they would somehow keep the rebels down. They would stop any kind of action happening. And this is a mother who's just come in and found her son. He'd been shot through the back, shot through the leg, and she'd just walked into the room, found him, and half an hour later he died. He passed away.
Paul, I just want you to talk me through almost the mechanics, the logistics of being a journalist in Syria today, the dangers that you're facing, the problems of filing your reports.
Yeah, I mean, it's by far and away the worst conflict I've ever covered. When me and Marie did Libya, we kind of sneaked in or went through a border crossing to Egypt and went straight into rebel-controlled areas. When we did cross into Syria this time, we had to go across the mountains from Lebanon with gun runners and smugglers to get us in. We went through a minefield on a motorbike, which was interesting, because they said they'd found all the mines and marked them. However, the little sticks that they'd marked them with had been washed away. So we weaved our way in, and that was just getting into the country. Once you were in Syria, the government had completely locked down everywhere. We could travel for maybe half a kilometre at a time, and it took us, 4 or 5 days to get 30 kilometres. Then to get in, the city of Homs was besieged, and I mean, seriously, they'd done trenches around it, ringed it in steel, and they had such a vast amount of ammunition that they could afford to sit there for 18 hours a day hammering a civilian neighbourhood. To get in there, we had to go through a 3-kilometre long sewer tunnel storm drain that was about 4 foot high. And that storm drain was the sole lifeline for Bab Amra that provided all sacks of flour, grain. That was the only way in, and that's the way the journalists had to go in. Once there, we were... Sorry, I'm rabbiting.
No, you're not rabbiting at all. I suppose the question I want to ask is, you know, and this is a question, you know, as any reporter who's been out in the field knows, you know, that you ring the news desk, and there are times when you ring the news desk and they want to bite your arm off. They're so desperate to get pictures. They're so desperate to get copy. In my case, that, you know, they want you live from the scene. If you were able to walk backwards with a camera now and you were in Syria today, how good do the pictures have to be to get in the paper? Because it does seem to be slipping down the agenda.
It's fatigue. I think, is a general fatigue. We've gone through Iraq, we've gone through Afghanistan, we went through Libya, which kind of fitted a kind of perverse little slot, really. It had a beginning, middle, end. People could watch it. It kept the interest up. With Syria, after nigh on 3 years, there's that awful kind of fall over the cliff of news where something really horrendous has to happen to get it back on top of the news. I don't think, to be honest, there is, people are not sending journalists to Syria now. As you know, I think most big organisations have actually stopped sending people in, A, because of the dangers, but B, I can't think of a single photograph that I could take in Syria at this point in time that would have any effect on people's awareness. That there is so much there. Journalists have gone in and showed the world exactly what's happening, and the world has closed its eyes, turned around, scratched its arse, and done something else. There has been a disgusting degree of negligence when it comes to the Syrian conflict.